There we go. All right. Did you lose co-host Karen? Let me give that back to you. There we go. All right. Hopefully you've had a chance to pop into the shell a little bit. Right now, there's no interactive elements in the shell itself. If you all want to, we can definitely add discussions and things up here if you want to post and ask questions and have sample things between our sessions. This class is set up to model the class that's provided by the state. But we have our own additions in here, and there's other links and other references that are inside here. So this is usually done by the state in like a 2-week intensive or like an 8-week long like process. So we've definitely pared it down a little bit to kind of help it be a little more streamlined. And you'll see that we have links in here that y'all can't see. But let me dive into this first intro module here. And what you'll see, how this is laid out, is in 4 units for each of the 4 times we meet. So we've got unit 1, 2, 3, and 4. 4, we're going to do something different this time. So it's hidden to you guys right now. So don't worry about that. We'll get there later. And throughout the module, you'll see that it ties to the rubric specifically. So as we go through, we're going to talk about it through the lens of the rubric. And of course, the overarching, there's 2 goals of this training. One is obviously to help us all make better online experiences for our students. The second goal is to actually submit your course to the state for review. And what that does is when you get your course submitted and approved, students can search through other community college. So let's say a student's enrolled at Santa Barbara and the class that they want is filled. Let me reverse that. Let's say a student's enrolled at Ventura College and their class that they want is filled, History 101. They then can go to the state level and do a course search for any History 101 classes. That, because Ventura would be full, no classes from Ventura would show up. And then the next class is going to be alphabetical order through the entire 114 colleges, right? Santa Barbara City College in alphabetical order, so way down that list, right? So when you get your course approved at the state level, it gets a little badge, a little dot that says it's, I can't remember what the badge actually says. Quality reviewed, I think is what the badge says, but then it also lifts that class up to the top of the search. So then your course at SBCC becomes the badge course. If you get your course badged, you can't simply hand that course off to somebody else because the badging is you tied to your content. And I think Angel might be using some of Esther's content, correct, with your class? So same thing, she can't just hand you your class and it be approved. You have to be approved and the course content needs to be approved. So that's kind of how that works. Let me dive into this and we'll take a look at the rubric and our own self-assessment tool. So on this first page, and you have access to this, is a link to the OEI's webpage. And the rubric changes every so often. The last revision was just in April 2020. A lot of times now, for the past 2 or 3 revisions, the differences are minute and they're mostly language. So the framework and what's there is the same, and it's been the same for about 2 years. They'll just change like a comma or a sentence structure or a specific word to be more in line with newer practices. And this is what the rubric kind of looks like. And this is important because this is the tool that's used to review your class at the state level. So you have aligned, incomplete, and additional exemplary. To get your course passed, every single unit, every single item through the entire rubric needs to be at the aligned level. You don't have to have things at the exemplary level. However, what you'll find is just by implementing best practices, it's very easy to get certain items to the exemplary side. Which items, that will be depending on your content and your course completely. So it's one of those, it depends. And so we'll go through this as we go through the content. So that's just there as a reference. And then the DE self-assessment is something that Karen and I worked on. And this is not an official SBCC tool. There's no, this isn't like stamped by curriculum or anything, but this is designed to be a self-assessment tool for yourself. This isn't something that's used to review your class. We might suggest that you use this to look at your class when we work with you, but it's really an addition. You can make a copy of it. So if you open this up, you can go to File, save a copy. And I apologize. For some reason, when I'm sharing recently, I think it's the newer update of Zoom, my computer runs a lot more slow when I share it. But you can make a copy and edit this all you want. And the idea here would be that you would go down through the items and just simply check yes or no. Is this something you're using or not using? And then a place for you to add notes. So this could be a link to a resource or explaining actually why you don't do something. And I'll come back here and we'll look at this a little bit later on. But this whole first area is talking about what we talk about in curriculum, right? Which is regular effective contact. That's a big part of online teaching. And then the other pieces on here align to the actual rubric itself. So again, this is just a tool for you to use to kind of keep track of where you are and where you want to be. You don't have to use it, but it's a good way to at least a starting point to be a little bit more organized. So we use both because the rubric is great when you're finished, but a self-assessment checklist is better while you're actually building your class to kind of help you figure out where you want to go and map things and leave notes for yourself. Any questions on those two, or kind of like what your goals are or anything like that? Okay. Bring up my chat window too, if it'll let me. Nope, no chat for me today. Just I'll keep an eye on it. All right, I'll go in the next area. And sorry, I'm gonna do one thing really quick. Perfect. Okay. Done that. Where did that? Why is it outside? Oh, I know why. Here we go. Okay. So section A is focus of the rubric is focused primarily on content presentation. And so these are kind of the areas. One of the things that you'll note in the way that we do our training is, if I look back at the modules, is we'll be talking about section D, which is accessibility, back and forth as we go through the different units. So A is just on content presentation, but when we show you some samples and show you some tools, we'll be talking about accessibility and universal design as we go through these units. So we don't have a separate unit just on accessibility, just so you're aware. And I'm not going to read everything on every slide. I'm not that kind of person. So these are always here for you to kind of reference and go through. We'll have, like I said, we'll have lots of different pieces inside here for you. So again, looking at the rubric, sorry for the bouncing back and forth, but the rubric is chunked into different groups. So looking at 1, 2, and 3 for A is the unit objectives, and I'll show you a sample of that, which will hopefully help understand what that is. And then 4, 5, 6, and 7, and 8 are talking about the actual use of the course management system. you'll see CMS or LMS used a lot, and that's learning management system or course management system. For us right now, that's Canvas. And of course, as years go on, that might change. So that's why they use these abbreviations. Again. Cool. Unit objectives. So let me go into my fall course. And this is the one I used that was aligned to the rubric. So I want to show you what this looks like. In my syllabus, so in our course outline, right, we have our SLOs and we have our course objectives. In my syllabus, I have my course objectives listed and I've got my SLOs listed. Those items are not what's being talked about when we talk about unit objectives. Unit objectives can be these things, but they're not specifically those things. The way that I did this in my marketing course is if I go into a module, I've got my modules broken down by weeks, and you'll see samples of my course all the time. Again, I'm not saying mine's perfect. What I did is I separate out each week to be the same format. This is a short 8-week class. So I've got a start page and I've got 2 chapter quizzes because we're doing 2 chapters in a week, and then an assignment and a discussion. The next week, same thing. Start page, quizzes, assignment, discussion. And I repeat that throughout. And I try and that's what I've found over the years that helped me and help my students kind of stay on track. So that's kind of the pattern I've developed. Inside these week 2 start pages is where I do all of my design work. So what I did is I have a little simple formatted list of everything that we're doing for the week. These just link to the items. You don't have to do that. I link to the PowerPoints for reference, but I actually have my lecture videos embedded in this page. So students come to one page, they see images, they see a little synopsis of each chapter, and then they see the lecture videos for each chapter. So it's all in one page. And I've pared this down over the years. And then apparently that one doesn't have it. Why? This seems like the wrong class. I've added my objectives to the top there. Sorry about that. Let's go into
Robert, can I ask you a quick question?
yeah,
while
of
you
course.
Do that? So if you have, I love that kind of start page where you can put, like the objectives of the week, the unit or whatever. If you're linking to those items though, that are also, I'm guessing, embedded in your modules, does that then, like, so you know how you can make the modules required?
Yeah.
If they accessed everything on that front page, would that then also check off that they had done it on the module?
Yeah, absolutely.
Oh, sweet. Okay.
Yeah, and we'll go through. We'll definitely take time later on in the training, like weeks down the road, to go through that what they call the requirements listing. But yeah, so whether you can link it from, even if you have a quiz that's due that week and you link it from an announcement, if they go in and take that quiz from your announcement, it'll check off the required item.
Oh, that's awesome. Thank you.
Yeah. I try not to link it from too many places just to kind of funnel my students in through the modules area. So let's go back into this page because I don't know what's up with that other class. Here's my unit objectives. It doesn't have to be long. They're not taken from my objectives. They're not taken from my SLOs. These are simply what I think students should get out of this week, what we're covering. And I've tried to put it in language that they understand. Now, these tasks definitely mirror what we're talking about in the SLOs. You could simply list the same goals from your COR or your SLOs that pertain to that unit as well. So it just depends on you and what you think. So there's nothing that's using these later on, but I do tie my SLOs into like my assignment rubrics and stuff like that. So, but this is what they're kind of looking for in section A1 through 3, is having some kind of goals. And this might look different for you, right? It might be every chapter, it might be a unit. So in this particular course, this is covering 2 chapters, right? So it doesn't have to be just chapter by chapter. It just depends on what you're doing. And there's no, I would probably say 3 is probably the minimum in general, but it could be more than that. It could possibly be less than that. It's just kind of like, what do you expect students to get out of this week's XYZ? This is my master shell, so you can see I don't have any lectures in here because I record new lectures every semester. So this is just my blank template one. Does that make sense where that lives? You can have those unit or unit objectives inside of each piece. So you could have them inside of a quiz or inside of an assignment. The key is to be consistent. So since I've broken mine out into weeks and I have those nice little start pages, I felt that was the best place for it as like a starting landing page for my students. Again, that might be looking slightly different. So placement. So putting in a place where students can find it. I'll go back and show you one trick on that. Clarity talks about how those objectives are written, and specifically in a way that students can understand the language, right? Sometimes our SLOs or our unit objectives are written for the curriculum committee or the SLO committee and not directly for students. So this might be a chance for you to pare down what that SLO or unit objective officially looks like from your own perspective. And then alignment is that alignment back to the SLOs or back to your unit or your course objectives. So it's not just making up a whole bunch of new ones. They can be aligned directly from your chapter. I know some people, I don't think you did this, John, but I know some people have taken the chapter objectives out of their books and put it in there. And that's fine, right? Because then you're connecting it back to the reading, right? So this isn't an official alignment. It's just making sure that any of those little unit objectives that you're putting in are part of the overall course. Make sense? Questions?
Yeah,
so
just a quick question. I got a quick question. It's just it says per unit, and you said that you can do it per week. So what is the minimum that you need to do it by? Is it like every chapter, every week, every other week? Is there like a minimum that you need to do this? Because you're doing it per week.
I'm doing it per week. The minimum is really, because for most people, they are either doing weeks or units. So that would be the minimum, is per week or per unit. I have my course broken out into weeks. I know many of the English classes are broken out more into units, where one unit might span 2 or 3 weeks, right? So that they could do it by unit objective. So it just depends on how your course is laid out. But again, it doesn't have to be, this shouldn't be a lot of extra work. If you're feeling like it's a ton of extra work, we can help you kind of map out what your course rhythm should be. And definitely these objectives I wrote after teaching this class online probably for 4 years, right? So I really understood what this course was doing before I even wrote these. So that's way down the line, right? So I know we're doing a lot of things at one time in this training, but that's the more you know your class and the flow, that'll help you decide how many of those objectives you want to put in and where they should land. And again, I'm not tying these ones, I'm not tying into assignments or anything else. They're more derived from that language.
Rob?
Yeah.
For the lowest level students, I usually have an assignment almost every day. Is that going to be a challenge with this structure? Do you think will it be excessive? Because if you give them a weekly assignment, they won't do it daily, which they have to do to get out of the class.
Right.
You know?
No, that's completely fine. And we're working with in a separate training, we're working with the School of Modern Languages, and most of those classes are set up that same way, where they have 1 or 2 small things they're doing every day. What you might still want to do though is have, especially for that where you're mapping out a whole week where they're doing things every day, you might want to have a landing page where it really explains what they're doing through the week. That's up to you. You don't have to do it. So if you're not doing it that way, you might have like one objective in every one of those assignments. Right? Here's what here's what you're trying to do in this assignment. Right? So it's kind of like that. What's your end goal of this thing? Is that helpful?
Yeah.
The other reason I'm a big fan of doing it all on a page for each week is this right here. The last part of section A, or the first part, is the placement, right? This is all for students. So how do students find the information, right? Canvas lets student access through their assignment, through the announcements tool, through the calendar, through here, through there. So by having all of my lectures, these unit objectives, links to all of the assignments, the pretty images, all of this work that I've done as the faculty member, right? I want to make sure students are seeing this. So by putting it all in one page, and this might be a lot longer for you depending on your class, right? I can add a due date, quote unquote, to the page. What this does is it puts that page on my syllabus, it puts it on the students' to-do list, it puts it on their reminder list, it puts it on their calendar. So now the content isn't just links floating somewhere in your modules that students might skip over or not even know that they're supposed to be clicking on it and reading it. This puts it more up front and center to the students. So if I have any page in my class, I can go into edit, and at the bottom, see it at the top at the moment, but at the bottom of your little editing window is a check mark that says add to student to do. So by simply checking that and giving it a due date, Canvas does all its magic based on due date. So now not only is the assignment front and center to the student, but now the page, the unit for the week is also front and center. I can see this in my syllabus. If I go down to the calendar area, you can see that each start page is at the top of each week. In this class, I've set up everything to start on one Monday and end the following Monday. So to make sure the start page floated to the top, I make it due at 11:58 p.m. and the other items are due at 11:59 because everything's arranged by due date. So Bronwyn, what you're talking about is if everything is structured day by day, if they come into this view, they'll actually see a day-by-day task list of what exactly they're supposed to be doing on each day going forward. So this adding those due dates to those contents really help kind of show that in the grander scheme of things. Cool. Any other questions or comments or ideas there? Good. I am going to stop sharing and let Karen take over for a little while. Yeah. Oh, yeah. I definitely loves Bloom taxonomy. There's a short version of that in that page I was showing you. And then John sent a link to another version of it. I can tell you that's one of the things I got, not dinged is the wrong word, but they asked me to change was in my unit objectives, just changing some of my verbiage to things like explain or, you know, just if you do that up front, and we'll go help you do that as we move through this as well. But that was definitely one of the things that they'll help you catch as well.
Okay, ready to move on? What I'm going to show you now will be the next 4 elements in section A. And as Rob has been mentioning, is section A is about content presentation, and the 4 elements I'm going to be showing to you will be course navigation, how a student is introduced to the course when they come into the home page. We have some ideas for you to make it, you know, flow better for students when they first come in. So not only the navigation of your class, but also how you create your unit level items. Are you going to be creating, you know, by weeks, by units? certain topics, as you're creating your different units, I'm sure it'll become clearer to you which will work better for you. And also think of the chunking of information into, digestible little pieces is also as you would go down into the page level. Okay, and I'll show you some examples of that. The other thing I want to show you is the effective use of some of the built-in CMS tools. And we'll look at those together. And then Rob will show us some effective use of multimedia in your course. And then we'll probably give you a break, but then I will show you a little bit about making your pages accessible. And we'll give you more information on that today. And as we talk through the different subjects, we'll be weaving accessibility into all of them. Okay, so let me mention to you, so A4 through 7 will cover how course material is broken into approachable chunks, and it helps how it's set up for our students, how they're introduced to the course and how they're directed throughout the course. And as Rob did mention, students, it's not cookie cutter. Students' classes or instructors' classes are different. Everyone's different. And we're not looking for, cookie cutter classes, but there are a number of things that I believe are extremely important and should be used in all classes, because we want to make the use of the course easy for students. And we do have a number of student or instructors coming in, they're new to online, or they've used a different LMS. Some instructors are hesitant to ask questions, and we encourage you, do come to us if you have a question, you're not bothering us. And we also have some instructors who have grown up with computers all their life, and so they also don't want to ask for help because it's a challenge. They like the challenge of trying to figure things out. But if you find yourself creating something and it's taking a little bit too long, just contact us and we can help you with that. Okay, now we do have a template if you have not yet started creating your class. Okay, and when we think of navigation, when you come into your course, actually, let me show you this. Before you even get to your course, I sometimes think of the dashboard. This is what students generally see when they first log into Canvas. If you've been teaching at City College for a while, you may be aware that at one point in time, Canvas changed the dashboard view to what is called the list view. Okay, so you as a teacher are going to sign in and you have the dashboard view that has those cards for each of your classes. Some students, you may have found that their default view of their dashboard is this list view. And when they see this, I may be taking 5 classes, but if each class doesn't have something due, I'm not really being led into that class. Okay, so the good news, why I really brought this up to you all is at IT, they did decide, they talked to the COI and IT talked, and what they're going to be doing is resetting the dashboard view for everyone. All students come, next semester. So this problem that we've been seeing with students who come in and they're not seeing their cards, and so they're missing content, that's going to be taken care of. So students may want to change back to this view, and once they get used to Canvas, there's no problem with that. But I just wanted to point out and let everybody know that the card view is going to be the default view for students come next semester. Okay, so I think that's a very good thing. So thinking of things being clean and easy to navigate, that's going to be a big plus when that happens. But when students go into their course, let me see, which one do I want to show you? I think I closed it. Hold on. You'll have to cut that out, Rob. Cut the big pause out. So here's the class. This is the template that we can place into a blank shell that you have if you want to get an idea of how to basically set up a Canvas course. And what we're looking at here on the homepage, what we really think about is when you're designing your class, you're so into the design and you know the content and everything you want to show to students. What we want to remind you is also to take a step back and think, if you were a student and this was your first, introduction, this is the first use of Canvas, if you take a step back and think of it as a student would, that may be helpful when you're creating your class. It would be really helpful for students if you take that vision of your class. You can also ask fellow instructors. You can stop by the FRC, but it's always nice to, to step back from things and have new eyes to take a look at things. So we talked about the dashboard. Another thing is this column over here on the left-hand side. This is the course navigation column, and there's a number of different menus over here. And something that we suggest instructors to do is, if you're not using something in here, say I don't have, let me look here, say I don't have discussions in my course for whatever reason, that I doubt that would happen. But if there's something over here that you're not using, like collaborations or conferences, what we want you to do is to hide those items from students. If you're not using it, not to have that option there for students to, to be checking out, what is this? What do I need this for? So we want to slim down this navigation, and how we would do that easily is going to settings. And if I go to settings, what you're going to see at the navigation tab is you're going to see within here two different parts of this column. The items at the top are the items that students have access to. Okay, so if I scroll down here at the bottom, I can see there's a number of things that I have removed from students' access, and a few that I would suggest be moved out of the availability of students to access all the time would be pages and files. So those are the two that jump out to me, mainly because you're going to be adding pages that you're giving to students at different times in the semester. And we generally want to have those available in the module that they'll be working on them. Okay, so I always think of it as a file cabinet in my room. Would I want students to come through my file cabinet looking for a paper, or would I rather, place them in the module and present them when they're actually going to be used in them? Okay, so that would be my suggestion within this course navigation to make it a little bit better for students. And let me go back home and see what else I have to show you. Okay, and so when we think of unit level chunking, let me show you something here. Okay, and so we may be thinking of our content to be presented in units or by module or by week, but you'll see within each of these elements, I think this unit one would be like would be a module called unit one, but within it you're going to have, like Rob was showing you, a number of different content links and a number of different assignment links. And it appears, no matter which you decide to use, I would have a consistent pattern for students to know what to expect each week when they come into class. But how you set this up, this will be up to you, but be thinking about consistency of the different levels of your modules. And let me hop back here. Here we are. So this is on a page, and let me just show you the modules within here. What do I have in here? Generally, I will see the very first module in a course as a welcome begin here type of module, where items that students need basically either immediately or throughout the semester. They may need to come back to access these different types of items. You can see here there's a course overview, an introduction about the instructor, some course resources. So within this module, the unit level chunking, we're adding different pages, different assignments within here, and then we're keeping somewhat of a consistent layout for each module. Okay, and however you decide to do this, is up to you. But always be thinking about the student when you're setting these up. And when we look at a page, so let me look at this week 1 overview. So we can tell by that icon beside the title there, this is a page within Canvas, and we're suggesting that you add content to your courses mainly using Canvas pages. And the reason being is it's much easier to set up for accessibility. If the content you have can be placed on a page, that's the number one way to go. We do have instructors who use Google Docs. We have instructors who do use Word docs and PowerPoint or different Google files or PDF files. No matter the type of file that you use, remember, everything needs to be accessible. Okay, and the different ways to make things accessible we'll show you. And what we really want to do is to make, our different items usable by the most people as we can. Okay, and so let me go over this page quickly. So this page is accessible, and basically if I click on edit, you can tell what this is using is the different headers. Okay, and I'll go into it a little bit deeper when I'll show you how to set the needed items for making this accessible. But there's, I think, 7 different elements that I'll be showing you. I'll be showing you the header styles, and the reason we do a number of these different accessibility formatting is for students who use screen readers, and I can show you an example of what a screen reader sounds like to a student who's using one. So a student who is blind, who is has poor hearing, or poor sight, they could be using a screen reader. And so what we want to do is make our content accessible to them. And I will show you a bit about that. And I have a couple different web pages that will get you the feeling of how students who have different disabilities, or how people prefer to listen to things, how that will show for them. Okay, and we have to think it's not only people with disabilities, but I know that the captioning of videos, I know a number of foreign language students use that. I know I myself, if I have too much noise here at home, I'll put on headphones to listen to a lecture from a class without, if I can't be listening to it, out loud for everybody to hear, I'll use headphones to listen to that. Okay, and so we will be showing you a little bit about that. And then the other item, the very last one, is for A7. It's the effective use of course management tools. Okay, so a couple things that would fall under that, and they kind of overlap each other here. But when we think of the home page, I think of that as a Canvas tool. This is the landing place for the students when they come into our class. And there's going to be a number of different things we'll be showing you that we would suggest be on your homepage. And I always think when I look at somebody's homepage, a couple things: who's my instructor? How do I contact them? What do I need to do? How do I pick up my textbook? Or what textbook do I need? What do I do if I have questions? So we have a little list that we can show you, but those are the things I really like to see right up front when I open up a course to look at. And another thing, and Rob touched on this, and so this is a Canvas tool, is the syllabus menu. And in this example, you can edit this page and you can place your syllabus within here. But there's something special about this page. What it does is it puts what's called a course summary in here. And in this small class, there's not a lot of items, but the different assignments that have due dates, they're all going to be listed in here. Rob's example was better because you saw how the items that were due on certain dates, they automatically are populated on here for students to see. Okay, so that's nice. You're creating your assignments, you're giving due dates. This is going to be populated. You don't have to do anything about it. It's already going to be there. Some people do put their whole syllabus here. I've seen people embed a Google Doc, so it doesn't take up as much room here on the syllabus page. So a number of different ways that you could use that. The modules, how I showed you, how we lay those out, how we choose the unit level chunking, that I would believe is something that would be called a tool within Canvas. And we also want you to be thinking that if you do have files or URLs to different articles that you want to share with students, what we suggest you do in the modules is, of course, some of you may already know that I could come in here and I could make a single item in each of these modules for an external URL, or here's one for a page or a link to some information. What we're going to be suggesting you to do is to create pages, but then add links to the different items, to the different like Word documents or PDFs or external websites you want students to go into, because we want to keep this, as condensed and easy for students to follow, rather than placing, 10 different links here. I could make one page and have everything that I need students to review right within the page. Okay. And let me look here. Anything else? Can you think of anything else, Rob?
Nope. There was one thing I was going to add, and let's see.
Let me stop sharing.
No, John was just saying that. Well, I'll let you talk about it, John. Go ahead and chime in. Your mic.
Oh, I was just offering a side comment on the chat with regard to the screen readers. If you want to really try your material out, Chrome has a free extension, which is, it's not a bad screen reader. And so you can find the link or go to the Chrome store and download it. Overwhelmingly, the most popular screen reader is a commercial product known as JAWS, and that's not one, aside from visiting the DSPS office, it's not one, I think, so far as I'm aware, that we have freely available. Although do they have a build of it in the VDI? Does anybody know?
I don't know for sure, but I wouldn't be surprised if they do.
I know they have. I know they have it in there, but because they have to pay for the license, they may restrict the usership of it. But if you just want to get a feel for there's what is compliant in usability and accessibility, and then there's what's truly usable. And I think we're all passionate educators. What we're probably interested in is not only ticking the checkbox, but really making the content accessible to students that explore, experience things with sensory or ability or cognitive processing differences.
Can I ask you a question about JAWS?
If I can answer it, I will. I'm not expert.
Do you know if DSPS provides it for students who have documented disabilities, or do the students have to buy it?
I believe that they can provision it. They do have some assistive device loaning stuff for smart boards and furniture and those kind of things. So I believe they do, but the DSPS folks are really responsive. Email them or pick up the phone and give them a call. You'll get an answer back real quick.
Yeah, I'm just thinking about for design. I'd rather design the course with the tools that are most likely to be available to the students, especially the students who are underrepresented and struggling financially. So so my concern is if JAWS is the very best, and I'm thinking about that tool, I might be systematically disadvantaging poorer students, but I'll check out DSPS to see what they say.
Yeah, and I can talk about that a little bit. I know that they, I've asked this question before of DSPS. I'm like, what is the tool that you recommend or give to students to use? And they don't. They let the students choose what works best for them. Now, that doesn't mean that they can't get grants and other things to pay for something like JAWS if that's what they want to use. But DSPS is, kind of similar to how we work with faculty. We'll recommend a tool, but we'll let you choose the tool that works best for you, right? So that's kind of their approach on it, which isn't helpful.
But if you guys, I trust you guys, and if you say JAWS is the best tool, I do know, a few years ago, the director of DSPS was saying that they were going to have access to a large donation in a few years. And I think that's kicking in now. Yeah. So if we align ourselves so that our students can get JAWS, and then we teach to that, that's great. And so I understand that DSPS can't do that, but I can do it. I'll do it for my students. Go get JAWS. DSPS will pay for it as long as it's a reality.
Yeah, if that's a reality at this point. Yeah, definitely.
Okay,
I think what you'll find. JAWS. Well, JAWS is the most popular for a specific group of students. So JAWS is not the most popular or the best for someone who, let's say, just has dyslexia and needs something to be read to them versus actually navigating a program. So JAWS has a lot of complexity to it, which lets students navigate by a joystick or by a keyboard commands for students who can't use a mouse or something like that. So it can be overly complicated for someone who just needs the screen read to them. So a lot of students use the Chrome tool that John talked about. Also, many students, even those who utilize screen readers, use mobile ones, right? And the one that Karen is going to point to one right now that is actually built into our Canvas. So all students have access to it already without having to download or go get anything.
So you've probably run into this little icon at some point, maybe even clicked on it by accident and then heard the voice talking. But if you click here, students can listen to the page. Okay.
I don't know if it'll work. Yeah,
it's that little icon that, I'm sorry, I missed that. So the little icon in front of about.
Yep, this one right here.
A little arrow that's like floating off to the left in your Canvas page.
Yeah, I remember many people hit it accidentally, and that's how they find out about it. But this is the active read speaker. Okay.
And if I remember right, that does not work on mobile. Is that correct?
That is correct. Speaker? And I don't believe it works with, like, if you had files like PDFs and things in here. I believe it's more for content within Canvas.
Yep. Hi, Anne.
Hey, Anne.
Snuck in.
Hi, my sincere apologies. I had it on my calendar as beginning at 2, so I am punctual but late.
No worries. We're gonna have the recording up in the Canvas channel too, so okay, no worries. Good. Yeah, and you know what? Let's take a little break. But before we do that, I'll just remind everyone that we are going to record these sessions. They're only going to be available to you guys inside the Canvas shell for review. So if things happen, I know Mo had to leave early today too. So we're going to try. We want you to try and attend the live sessions as much as possible, so we can ask questions and interact with you all. But things happen, right? Especially in COVID life, there's just chaos ensues, right? So if you need to leave early or come late or whatever else, we'll have them recorded for you to review. So that's there.
Hey, Robert, before we break, I just wanted to, I was checking the SPS website, and then yes, they do use JAWS for screen reader. And then they use Kurzweil.
Yep. First
Or-
while.
Yeah, so they do use it. They do provide it.
They don't provide it to all students, and they don't like force it upon students.
Correct.
Right. That's the difference. Is it's hard when there's not like it's kind of like even on campus, we don't force everyone to use Microsoft Word, even just at that basic level, right? Some people are in Google Docs, some people are in Word, some people are using OpenOffice. So it's we can make recommendations, we can support to a point, and that's kind of what DSPS's stance on it as well with the accessibility tools. Let's take a 10-minute break. So we'll come back at 2:10 to 11. So you can stretch, use the restroom, get a drink of water, coffee, your drink of choice. I'm not going to judge. I'll pretend it's Friday. And we'll have some time for questions before we dive back in at 10 as well.
It's nice to see you, Anne.
Hey, John, it's always great to see you. I was trying to figure out are you in sick bay on the Enterprise? Where are you?
Yeah, and they're careful with their resources.
Any questions on anything we've covered so far? Comments, concerns, anything at all?
Rob, the one comment I would add is that I'm really excited about some of the sample materials you put out in the Commons and in the other classes. And that what I've found is it's really easy in Canvas to import content, and then I can always mark it as hidden, unpublished, and then I can kick it around, do some development with it, modify it as I need to. But it's really nice to be able to grab your Tinker Toys and have my own copies of them, and I really appreciate that.
Yeah, you bet. Does everyone in here know about the Canvas Commons and how it works? Yeah.
No.
Nope. Karen, I might need you to demo that if you don't mind showing it really quick. For some reason, the Commons will not work on my incognito browser. And that's primarily what I use for Canvas. So it's I always have to log in separately. But basically what the Commons is, and I'll let her kind of navigate while I talk, is a place where you can share content with other instructors at SBCC. There is 2 levels to the Commons. There is our level, and then there's the public out to the world. Right now, so it's just that Commons link over on the left. And anything that's in our Commons is, when you're in SBCC's Commons, is only shared with SBCC. We have ours locked down. So if you share anything there, it's only accessible by SBCC folks. Now, we can help you do this if you want to do it. You can make an area of the Commons that's only for your department. So you can have things shared campus-wide, or you can share just to your department. And you can share a module, you can share a quiz, you can share a page, or you can share an entire course. So you can kind of choose what level you want to share items at and how much you want to share and who you want to share it with. And then what you can do is you can bring those items into your class. And what's kind of cool about it is, let's say I have a resource. One of the resources I made is like a help page for students, has all the links to all the Canvas help for like 6 specific things. If I make changes to that, you can be notified to just update that one resource. Or you can say, I don't want to update it because I've made my own changes to it, and now this is kind of my version of it. But allows you to kind of push things out department-wide that way as well. One of the things, I don't know if they're still doing it or not, but PE used to share field rules. So they had a certain set of rules for use for the field for students and faculty, and for checking out equipment. And so instead of putting that same page in every single person's shell, they put it in the Commons and then have everyone add it there, and then they can push out the new version each semester, each year, whenever changes are made. Are you guys doing that in CIS at all, John? Sharing content that way?
Yes, Esther's a better sharer than I'm more of a taker, yeah, because we share a lot of shells. I suspect that as we combine our departments, CIS combining with comp and ultimately with CNEE, that we'll be doing a great deal more of this.
Yeah, so that's kind of what it is and where it is.
And this template here is the template you could download that I was showing a few moments ago, that has the example of the home page, and it has a example of the 3 different assignments if you wanted a basic layout to get started.
Did you go all the way through 7, Karen?
You have the last one
Yep.
of the,
For 8.
yeah,
Yep.
it's like multimedia.
Yep.
Yep.
And yeah, definitely this is always your guys' time. So if you have questions as we're going, feel free to stop us or ask questions. If you want to halt us and chat, completely fine. So nice. It's part of why we keep these groups small too. So section 8 is effective use of multimedia. It's an interesting, to me, this is interesting in the language because it is basically assuming at some level, everyone is putting some type of multimedia in their class. And this is part of student engagement. So everyone's videos might be different. Some people just record their slideshows. Some people record their face. Some people don't. Some people just do audio tracks. There's different ways of engaging multimedia. But definitely over the years, there's a lot of studies on this too. But having video, even if it's short videos, really helps the students connect in a real way to the class. I remember one of my first years teaching online in the finance department, which is more recent. I was asked by a lot of my students if I could contact the professor for them because they didn't believe it was me that was actually answering their questions. And that comes from the university side a lot. But so by having your photo and by having your face in some kind of video and having your voice throughout the class, it really helps the student to know that's actually you that's there behind the class. Even if you're reusing many of those videos, it really adds that layer. And the more, even if you're not comfortable with it right now, and you're like, I can't even imagine doing videos all the time, the more you do it, the more comfortable it becomes. And, I'm pretty sure my students don't want to see this every week. So I do mostly voiceover videos, and then I meet via Zoom. So they understand that it's me behind the lens, so to speak. This is talking a lot about technical stuff. I think most of us are beyond this at this point. Flash is gone. JavaScript players kind of don't work inside of Canvas, which is part of why we push most people to do their recordings and then upload to YouTube as a hosting platform. If you're not comfortable having your content in YouTube, there's a place provided by the state called 3C Media, and we can help you get your content there as well. In general, you don't want to just upload a video, especially a longer video, into Canvas. There's not that much space, and the playback quality is very, very poor. Part of the reason why we like to use YouTube as a platform is because of the playback modality. It works on every single mobile device. It reformats your video, so you only have to upload one high-res version, and it'll display the proper size, speed, everything depending on the student's download speed. So it takes a lot of work out of our side. 3C Media does an okay job at that. It's not as good as YouTube because YouTube's owned by Google and they have more money, right? Video is all about bandwidth and money and that side of things. So that's one step of it. The second piece, and I won't cover the wave tool. This is another checker that we'll talk about later. But the other side of video or audio content is also captions or a transcript. Yeah, and I don't get into it too much, but there's definitely the analytics side of YouTube. So if you're wanting to see how students are using video and how much they're actually viewing, you can do that. Especially handy if you're making new videos every term, because you can really see the engagement in a located piece of time, but you can also kind of narrow down that engagement in the analytics as well. YouTube also does, there's two levels to captioning that you need to be aware of. So we have to have all of our video or audio content captioned or a transcript provided. So there's kind of one way is to write a script or write your paper out, whatever you're going to be talking about, and you can provide that along with, say, an audio lecture. And so the same content is available in two ways, via text and via audio. With video, traditionally that's done with captioning. So YouTube has an auto captioning tool. So if you haven't, I'm going out on a limb, and I think with maybe the exception of Bronwyn, but I think you've done this too, is that pretty much all of you have uploaded a video to YouTube in the past 6 months. If you haven't.
I have not. I use Screencast-O-Matic.
Okay.
So
and they have they use YouTube's captioning tool as well, right?
They do. Okay. Yeah.
Yeah, it's the same. It's exactly the same tool. Yeah. But it's the idea of just uploading that video, and Screencast-O-Matic is great for that. I forgot you guys use that. But if you need help with making a YouTube account and making the audio captions turn on, let us know, and we can work one-on-one with you to get there.
Okay.
So the auto captioning is good. It's not great, and it's by far from perfect. So you have that first pass where YouTube generates the auto captions. Then you have kind of two options, which is to either recaption it yourself, which is going through and adding punctuation and making sure that technical words don't turn into 4-letter words. That's not so much an issue anymore, but I've had some creative captions in the past, let's just say. And
what happens with my content, Rob, it's scary.
Yeah. Like I said, it doesn't know it's good. It's not great.
Hey, Rob,
yeah.
Gus, when you're saying that we have, a lot of money for transition because of COVID is earmarked for COVID, could some maybe hire some students to fix the captioning? Because I just hate that part of. I think that would be an appropriate proposal. Then our students would be getting paid to. No,
I don't know. It's not necessarily a bad idea, because the other side of the captioning thing is there's actually a state grant where they have professionals that will go through and recaption it for you, and so then you get a text file back, and then you upload that through the DECT grant. Yeah, so Don's talking about that, and that's why I don't know. That's why I hesitate on the would it be advantageous to have students do that, because it's already paid for by the state. I'm not sure. I'm not sure if it'll fly, but I think it's a good use of that kind of money, because then we're kind of keeping that money in house, so to speak, right? We're paying our local people to do that. So
a quick question about YouTube.
Yeah.
Has anyone had, the problem is I teach television. And so like I need to use examples of like a Modern Family clip that we screened or whatever. And so YouTube kept flagging it. And so now I host it on Vimeo, which I pay for. But they don't create captions. So now I'm just, as we're talking about this, just starting to sweat because I'm realizing, am I going to have to go in and like individually type out all of the videos I've made? Anyways, I don't know what to do.
Yeah, we can. I think Jeff has all of that. So Jeff is our primary DECT grant person. If you have a bunch of videos ready to go now, Danielle, we can get you down that path now. Otherwise, we'll bring that for you later. If it's not in there, we can definitely put it in the shell. There's a submission process, and actually Lori Vasquez is our key person. So there's a form that you fill out and they get submitted for you. So the one thing that you have to do. What's that?
This is to access the wide grant funds. Is the
Yeah.
point person is Lori?
Yeah, but there's a form for it. Oh, cool. John has it. There's a page for it now. I'll bring that up. Does it have the form on it? I think it's, yeah, here it is. It's this this form probably. I'm not going to go into that. We'll streamline those instructions for you because this is just talking about what I'm talking about. But yeah, it's the reason why I say wait is it's better to submit all of your videos at one time than to do them one at a time. It's actually less work. So if you have a bunch of videos ready to go, we can help you through that process. If you're still making one-offs, like hold off and we can submit it as a chunk. In the short term, your auto captioning is fine. In the long term, so if you're having videos that are using over and over again, especially, we want to make sure to get those professionally captioned. If you're sending out like an announcement video that is going to be used for 1 week and never used again, there's no point in getting it professionally captioned. It'll take longer to get the captionings back than it's actually relevant to the student, right? So that's that side of it. As far as the copyright side, Aaliyah, we can't, yeah, and the hand editor in YouTube is much better than it used to be. We can look and see, maybe we'll connect you just specifically with Jeff and look at 3C Media as a hosting possibility to see if that gets you around some of those, because this is housed by another community college. So
Okay.
yeah.
To answer that, no, it doesn't get you around.
It doesn't? Okay. So you'll have to stay in Vimeo, but maybe we can get that paid for you. And we can still get the captions done. So
Okay, cool.
let's
Sorry,
talk
thank you. I
about
don't want to
that.
be too specific. Yeah, we can deal with it later. Thank you.
Yeah, and you're not the only one by any means. So we'll figure out how that plays out for you specifically.
Thank you. I'm unwilling to give up my bachelorette clips. I need to talk about those.
Yeah, and
with my
that's always
students.
the tie-off, right? If you can edit your lecture so it doesn't have the clips and you can link to the clips somewhere else, or if they're provided somewhere else, that's the other way around.
Oh, that's a good
too,
idea. That's
right?
a good idea.
So it depends on how it's structured, right? And that comes down to, how many videos you're making. If you're making shorter videos, we always kind of promote the concept of 5 to 10 minute long videos. That doesn't work for everybody in every discipline. So if you're having an hour-long lecture, maybe you can cut that down into 10 to 15-minute segments, which also means over time, if you need to remake a video, you can remake a segment instead of the entire lecture. And then you put all those videos in a page. So then students can go through, you can make a playlist. There's all these options, right? So if you're a heavy user of video, we're gonna work with you and figure out how you wanna mesh them together.
Yeah, just to follow up on that, I am a heavy user of videos. And so I just in each weekly module created a page that just lists. And as I go through my lecture, I just say, at this point, you might want to refer to, the video in our page module. And the students picked up on it pretty quickly and they seem to be pretty comfortable with that.
Yep. And I would go on a limb and say the majority of our student body, no matter the age group or technical level, are fairly familiar with YouTube. So if it's a captioning, or if it's a scanning, or if it's a jumping to a time point, right, they can usually do that kind of navigation. So that's always a good thing. And the hosting inside of 3C Media, or the hosting inside of something like Screencaptify. What's the one you use? There's too many. Screencast-O-Matic is very similar. The player is very similar. So those things translate pretty well. So if you guys don't know that, and if, like I said, if you need help you learning these things too, we can help you do that. But you can link directly to the point in time in YouTube, which is always really nice. I'm not sure if Screencast-O-Matic does that. So let me show you an example of a different use of video. Any other general questions on video specifically in captioning? So here's and this is not someone who's gone through our entire session, but I wanted to show you a couple different uses of videos. Okay, so this is Ignacio's American Sign Language class, and on his homepage he has a quick little, it's actually an animated GIF, but this is made from a video, right? And so what's nice about this is it shows him in motion. It doesn't need to be captioned because it's an ASL. Because it's a language class, and many of the language instructors already do this, they'll do their greeting in the language that they're teaching, right? So the student drops in and they're like French teachers speaking in French, and they're like, okay, this is legit. So there's those kinds of things to keep in mind. But I show you this because this is a visual class, right? So when it comes down to quizzes, the quizzes need to be something that's visual and then something tied to it. So what they do as a group is they create quizzes with video embedded in the questions. So this is just a way to kind of think outside the box. This is literally, and there's a bunch of questions in here. So you can see it's a normal quiz. The students will play the video and then answer the question. In this case, there's no captions because there's no audio, right? If I go to number 3, just as another example, it's the same type of thing. So you play the short video, and then in this case, you're writing the answer, right? So just kind of starting to think outside the box as far as how you're incorporating things into your classes. And to expand on what you were just talking about, if you took a chunk of your lecture and put it into a quiz, you could then ask questions about the lecture as it's going on. So even if you took like a 5 or 10 minute video and just had the one video and maybe 3 questions below it, it's also a way to help keep track to see if students are watching, how they're interacting with the content, are they learning the content, all in one place, and giving them some points for actually watching the lecture, right? With quizzes, just as a reminder, in case you don't know, you can make it so they get full credit for a quiz, even if they get the answers wrong, right? So this could be just like a checkpoint. It doesn't have to be a right or wrong thing.
Rob, is there a limit to the amount of time that can be embedded in a Canvas quiz like that?
Nope, because this is still being hosted in YouTube, right? The one thing I would say is quizzes are more finicky in general with students losing Wi-Fi connection, okay? So if you are having them watch a 30-minute video and take 5 questions, there's a chance that if they're taking the quiz on their phone while a passenger in a car or something like that, that they might lose connection and get kicked out of the quiz, right? So there's that side of things. So I would definitely keep the videos per question shorter, as opposed to like dropping an hour video in here. But that's more of the technical, right? We're getting into the student experience as opposed to what's possible. But I like to think of those things as all holistically, you know. Any other questions? Or I can see the gears spinning already, and there's a lot of you coming up with different ideas of what you how you want to implement this. At least the 5 or 6 of you I can see on the video clips at one time. Good. Any other questions on video? When it comes to the technical aspect, like if you don't know how to embed a question, a video like this into a quiz, we can help you with that during our individual meetings. Everyone's going to be working in courses in different ways. I don't do these video quizzes at all like this. So this isn't something that I do. We're not saying you have to do this, right? Always, always, always. This is just examples to kind of get the ideas flowing. And there's, you can see, since they've got the videos for every question, he's showing one question at a time. And this helps the student not be overwhelmed by a ton of videos showing up in the course at one time or in the quiz. So there's things like that, that's just like process and things you learn over time. So we can help you through those processes for sure. And of course, gear it to what you are actually attempting to do. Any other media questions? Last thing I want to chat about really quick is the publisher content, especially when we're submitting to the OEI. I've tried to avoid bringing too much publisher content directly into Canvas. So this is like if I have a publisher that has their whole LMS thing up in the publisher side and they have their quiz banks up there, what I prefer to do is bring their quiz banks down into Canvas and have the students take the quizzes directly in Canvas. And that's just for the student experience. That is easier for me to do in marketing than it is for Bronwyn to do in math, right? So she might, depending on the class, be more reliant on the publisher tool for the quizzing aspect. We want to make sure that we're working with publishers that are also adhering to the same ADA guidelines. It's not saying that you can't use publisher content, but it's making sure that screen readers work. If they have videos, they're all captioned, that kind of stuff. Everything that we're talking about, that publisher also has to kind of align to. And if you're going through the badging process, you'll have to be able to kind of demonstrate that to the OEI folks because they won't have access. You might have to do like a Zoom session with them to walk them through what your publisher side looks like, just to add the layer of it. I would say that most publishers these days are pretty good, but even amongst something like McGraw-Hill, each book has a different level of how much content they've actually made and how accessible their tools are and all that kind of stuff. They're getting better, but it's a slow process. So if you're concerned about publisher content that you have, we'll definitely want to chat about that as we go forward. But being able to limit the requirement of the outside publisher material is always a good thing. Usually the text, the book part is not the issue. It's usually multimedia and quizzing, that kind of stuff.
Rob, is that a state threshold or is it a federal threshold for ADA?
ADA is federal, yeah.
Right, but I'm sorry, for when we're creating our content, are we speaking to the state guidelines? And are they different than the federal guidelines?
It's the same, and we're basically held to it. And I can send you the chart if you need it. We're looking at there's from the ADA, there's level A, there's AA, and there's AAA. Generally, we're in the AAA guidelines, or sorry, AA guidelines, which is the basic captioning and the screen reader readability, having images with alt tags, that kind of stuff. So it's, and again, if you're concerned about your publisher or a tool that you're using that students, especially if the students have to pay for that tool, you can ask if they don't have it put out there, you can ask your rep what the level of ADA compliance that their tool is matching. Depending on, so there's always the question, right? So like for Aaliyah's class for film production, if we're talking about something that is watching a movie clip and talking about lighting, there is little I can do to help a blind student to really understand the concept of lighting in a video clip, right? So there's always those boundaries and those special scenarios that there's those like weird exceptions. That is very narrow. So generally it's pretty standard stuff. I know that math is always hard for images as far as the screen reader, but as far as the video, the captioning shouldn't be too bad. I think Alex is either A or AA. If that's what is there a tool that you're thinking of specifically, Bronwyn? I'm going to stop sharing so you can take over, Karen.
Oh, I'm working with the data center on making almost free content for stat students. And so it's a work in progress. So it's good that I'm hearing this. So, because the data center is in Texas. So I don't know, but I know they're going to want to cater to the California community colleges. So this is really good information for me to on to them. So thank you.
Yeah, let me find.
They're in the middle. It's the people who will be doing the homework are called Mentoring Minds, and they're brand new. So they may not be aware, but at the same time, they're really eager to please. So this is a good time to catch them.
Yeah, I'll find that chart and I'll link it in the chat so you can see it. Go ahead, Karen.
Okay, so I'm going to cover a little bit about section D of the OEI rubric, and section D is on accessibility. And as I mentioned a bit earlier, we like to weave this in to the different sections as we go along. I was talking to John earlier, and he mentioned having created content previously and found himself having to go back and then make it all accessible. And so the people we've talked to and we've worked with, we've found that it is easier overall if you work in accessibility as you're creating content. Okay, and so what we're talking about accessibility, who needs it? Would be surprised how many people use the different accessibility features. And the example that is given here is when we have videos captioned. We know a lot of the students who are learning English will use captions. Students who are struggling readers, students with attention deficits, and even students working in noisy locations. So that was my example that I found one day, a lot of noise here, and I was like, this is great, I'll just listen, I'll read the captions of a video I was taking for a class. And unfortunately, that instructor had not put the captions on. And so the captions, the accessibility feature there would have been helpful to everyone. This class states that 1 in 10 undergraduates report having a disability, according to the National Center for Educational Statistics. And we also have to remember that accessibility, I'm sure you've all heard of Section 508 compliant. It's a legal requirement for educators. Okay. And something else that I learned, I was talking to Lori, who works in our department, and also DSPS. I didn't realize that a student with a disability has to disclose that. So if I were a student who used this screen reader, I don't have to disclose that. So I found that interesting. So we need to be prepared in all our content in case somebody needs that, because they're not always going to come forward stating what all that they may need. We hope that they do, but there's not a requirement. And so a few things that I want to mention, the different categories we see instructors add content to their class in would be, as I mentioned, the main way that we suggest is by using Canvas pages, but we also see that instructors will use Word documents, Google Docs, PDFs, different types of files. And we have to remember that no matter what type of file you're using, they all have to be made accessible. Okay. And let me just show you right over here a couple things. Things that have to be accessible: content created by the instructor, files uploaded by the instructor. So if you find a file that you want to share with your students, we want to make sure that the file is accessible. Just because you didn't create it, if you're sharing it, you want to make sure you're sharing accessible content. So a couple other things we want to look into, and Rob did mention this: content, your books, your different third-party applications. We all want to make sure that they have a VPAT showing us how is accessible. So we want to make sure anything we bring into the class has an accessibility feature to it. Let me look, what else did I want to show you here? This will be interesting to Bronwyn, and I can share this course with her. Recently, they've been coming up, the OEI CBC, with more information on making math, how to make math accessible. Okay, so I think that you'll find this interesting. It talks a lot about LaTeX and MathML. And so I think this may be helpful to Bronwyn and our other math instructors. So a couple other things. Let me jump back here. So the items that I'm going to be showing you examples of are, there's seven different elements, as they're called here. The headings, and we have to think of students who use screen readers, and what the screen reader does is, if I cannot view the page, then what the screen reader does, it has different shortcuts, keyboard shortcuts, that the user would know to type in, and it can do things like skip through the headers so I don't have to have the whole page read to me. Okay, so this page is short, but a longer page, and it's the last paragraph I need to learn about. I don't necessarily want to go through the whole page having it read to me. We could show you an example of how the screen readers sound. I believe they're sounding better than they used to, but they're very robotic, the computer voice when it's reading to students. Now the headers, most of these different accessibility fixes that we have are in the rich text content within the pages. And I'll show you a bit about that, where we're going to add the headings. And I remind instructors sometimes, they say, well, I do make it bigger, I do make it bolder, so the instructors, the people who are seeing that, of course, we look at it and yes, it's obvious to us, but if the page is being read to someone, we have to keep in content, we have to think of how that page is being read to the student through the screen reader. Okay, so the heading styles are important. Lists, when you create a list, be it a numbered list or an unordered list, which are just bullets, we want to make sure that we use the list icons within a rich text format, rich content format. And so I will show you how to do that. And we can make a short course with these different pages for you to refer to later. Another thing is descriptive links. A lot of times we share the HTML URL to students to share different links, different articles. When that is read to students, like this one down here, https:/:::, we don't want students to be listening to that if they're using a screen reader. So what we're going to be using is something called a descriptive link, which we type in the text and we make that link a hot link to go to the article we want it to go to. Okay, and so for an example, I see a number of people doing this also. Click here to read this article. And this would be read like link, click here to read this article. It's not telling us what this article is. It's kind of redundant with the link, click here. The more information, read this. These would be examples of inappropriate ways to describe your links. So over here, this is a lot easier. Read the debunking myth of voter fraud. Be sure to read our academic integrity policy. So if we set up our links like this is better for everyone, I believe, to read rather than to see them like this. So you just use the wording describing what the link goes to, and you make it hot to go to the page or the article. Okay, something else we need to think about is a number of people use tables, and I see people using tables for putting content to add things to their course. It's not that they're actually using the table to share data. And I would suggest, instead of using it for like a visual setup, if you're using a table, use tables when you're going to be using it to share data with the students. And you'll need to have column headers. We'll have to make a couple different adjustments in the formatting so that a screen reader would understand what I'm using. Am I using just column headers about content? Are we using the column headers and rows? Well, there's a way to make that known in the formatting. Okay, and there's just a few more to show you. And color, so color contrast, we have to have color contrast with our text on our pages. We want it to be there is a certain contrast percentage, but I'm going to be showing you a accessibility checker for pages in Canvas that will automatically go through and tell you if it's too low, it's not enough contrast to be used for your text on your pages. So something else, a coloring meaning. So meaning what you don't want to do is tell students to select 2 items from the red column and, or 2 items from the blue column. So as you know, there's a number of different types of color blindness, and I do have a website that will allow you to view any website that you add the URL to, how it would be seen to a student who's colorblind. So that is kind of interesting to view. Should be another one here. So images. So any image that you add into your pages, we'll want to make sure it has what's called alternative text. Because if I'm blind, I have poor vision, not able to view this, if this actually has content that you need students, to have knowledge about, you need to add alternate text so that students have described to them what the image is. Now, it may be an image that is just decorative, and there's going to always be a way that you can mark it as decorative. So then the screen reader will just slip or just read right over it. Okay, and let me see what else I got here. Okay, and captionings, Rob mentioned about captions. So what I want to do is just show you a basic page, just a simple page. It has a little bit of information about mammals. Okay, so this has no formatting on it, and I just want to show you quickly how we can make this an accessible page. Okay, so if I click edit, of course, this is going to take me in here to update this page. If I click on this last icon, I can resize this page. Sometimes they don't give us a whole lot of room. Let me make it a little bit bigger. Okay, and I want to remind you that the title of the page, when we think of headers, setting up headers, it's like we want the very top, the biggest header to be called it's an H1 header, and then they go down in size as the number goes up. So H1 is the main header, H2 would be a subtopic, a topic underneath the H2 would be an H3. I believe it goes down to an H4, may even go to an H6, but I usually don't see people going that far down in the headers. Basically, I want to remind you that the title of the page is the H1, okay? And so then within the page, the first header within here is generally a header 2. And how we choose the headers for different text is we come up here to this little drop down. Where'd it go? Right here, where it says paragraph. So we don't want this to be a paragraph. We want this to be a heading 2. And notice it doesn't even give me the option of a heading 1 because the title is the heading 1. So vertebrae, this is going to be an H2. And then underneath vertebrae, I would have another subtopic would be an H3. Okay, so here's mammals. And then let me look down here. This will be a topic underneath mammals. And so this is going to be an H4. Okay, and marsupials will also be a subtopic. So I am going to make it an H4. Okay, and this here is an H4, and I don't have to go through all of these, but you can see basically what I'm doing is I'm marking the different headers, giving them the correct header format so that the screen reader will be able to come through here and it would read vertebrae, and then I would be able to click a certain key combination using a screen reader that would then tell me all the H3 topics. So maybe I don't want to hear about mammals. I want to go directly into the monotremes or down to the marsupials. Okay, so it's just a way when we think of making things accessible, a way for people with screen readers to easily navigate through our pages. Okay, so something else that I mentioned that we need to do, we need to have alternate text on the images. And so, and you'll notice that this new rich text format, content formatter is a little different than it used to be. It has been upgraded. If I click on an image, it gives me this options link. And if I click on here, if I look over here to the right, platypus. Okay, so that would be fine. I could make a more descriptive alternative text if I want. That may be fine. Know that anytime I add an image, if I don't change the text, the alternative text, it will usually just say the name of the file. So this might have originally been platypus.jpg, which we don't necessarily want that read to a student, or it may have been a number from a place where I got the image. And a lot of times you'll see images that come from different photo spots where you can get free photos. So it's just a long number, which means nothing. So what I would do is I have the alternate text I would put in here. Now, if it were truly decorative and it didn't need a description, if I didn't need students to know what that image is, this is where I would select it to be a decorative image. Okay, so what I would do is I would go through each of these. Let me go ahead and click done on here. So this does have alt text on it. This is a good example of a URL, a link that's not a descriptive link. So this is the link I need. I'm going to cut this. And 3 types of mammals. I know that is the link that is going to display the 3 types of mammals item. So I'm going to hit Control K and I'm going to paste this link. And this is also new. I know in the past some of you have come to us and we were showing you about adding images to pages in Canvas, or anywhere in Canvas actually. And we always had you select to have links to open in a new window. You're going to find with this new editor, it does it automatically. So if you're looking for that, how do I find the open in a new page? That no longer exists. It does it automatically. Okay, so I'll go ahead and click OK. So that is correct here. If I come down, here's another item. These are the different lists. This is just a bulleted list. And let me come here. My bulleted lists are up here. And I can see this is highlighted. So it is a bulleted list. Okay, if it were not a bulleted list, if it wasn't bulleted by way of using this icon, then it would have shown us. It would have shown that is not being highlighted. So that is good. And down here is a table. But what I really want to see you, I won't make you go through this whole thing with me. But let me just save the changes I made. So what is nice about Canvas, something they have within here, is if we go to edit, and this was in the past version, but it's moved to a new spot. I believe it was up here before, but it's the same little man icon. And if we hover over it, it says accessibility checker. And if I click on it, I get the balloons. So balloons are what we want. And what that tells me is that there's not an accessibility problem as far as it can see within here. Okay, I do know this had problems and I changed it earlier. So if this was not set up with a caption up here, it would have flagged me and it would have said what was needed. Let me show you. Actually, this is the help from Canvas about how to use the accessibility checker. Okay, so basically create your page. There's items, be thinking of it, what titles, what subtitles, the different elements like the descriptive links. Be thinking as you're making your pages, these accessibility things that are required. And then after you're done, run the accessibility checker to make sure. And it'll make it really easy because, you know, that little panel that slides out, if you don't get the balloons, you'll get a list saying what's needed. If a picture needed an alt tag, it will highlight it. It will give you the area to place it. And then you could go ahead and you can fill it out. So it gives you all the options right there, what you need to do. And you can go ahead and apply the needed fixes until you get the balloons.
Hey, Karen, John wants to chime in and I want to show something to you.
Sure.
I just had a quick question, Karen, Rob. The last time I went through the process, my liaison was very insistent that I not use unordered or bulleted lists. She wanted numbered lists, and I could certainly understand that when there is an intrinsic ordering. I had a dispute with her because, or a disagreement, because some of the materials that I was enumerating were not ordinal. There was no ordering to them, and so I thought that was actually misleading to the student. Have they sorted that out, or was that just my liaison? Or
it sounds like your liaison, because generally
yeah, I haven't.
Bulleted or unloaded list is fine.
Yeah.
Oh,
yeah,
thanks.
that's same as I heard. And always if there's a number, you know, if it's an order of things, then I've never heard them say.
Yeah. Yeah, that's actually strange to me, John. So hopefully that person's got it sorted out, because that's definitely the idea there is, right, that you're not just using text and a little dash, right? You're creating an actual list for the screen reader to go through.
Well, and I understand this has been a real growth process, you know, and it's evolved and it's still evolving, which is why I'm back here taking the training, even though I've been through it.
Yeah, exactly. I'm going to still sharing for a second, Karen.
Sure.
And I just want to show, just because we were talking about my page earlier, so this is one of my start pages, just to kind of walk you through what's accessible and what's not on the page, because I have a lot of images on here, right? I've got, at first glance, 1, 2, 3 images. I've actually got 6 more right here, 7 more right here, right? All of these images, and this is on purpose, all of them are decorative. So I don't have to alt tag this, because this is purely just for fun. This is just to break up content with something that looks pretty. These are here just to look pretty and to help with the visual nature. It's still a list. It's just I've replaced the dots with a little arrow, a fancy arrow. It's the same exact thing. This banner is repeated here and here. So I don't need to put alt text on the banner, because the text is already there on the page. Student did not all of a sudden did not have any of the images. Does the content still make sense? That's the whole idea of if that image can be made decorative. So knowing all these issues, I've purposely designed my pages to not have to worry about the alt tags. And I stick to the caption. I spend my energy in the caption videos and then the text. I could have put all this content into a Word document or a PDF or something else. For me, it's a little easier, and I like the flexibility of having it inside of a Canvas page. So it just works on all the mobile devices without having to click outside. That's not necessarily going to work for everybody, but I know, like, for a lot of stuff that John does, he has a lot of things in different types of documents. I think in this class, I have 1 PDF that I give students. Everything else is in Canvas, or it's links to Google Docs, which are templates for their assignments. So I made a purposeful choice to try and keep everything in Canvas, so I could use the accessibility tool inside of Canvas. I'm not saying you need to do that or you should do that. That's just the choices I made for this class and this content. But just so you can see how this aligns into the accessibility. Any questions on that, or what Karen's been going through so far?
No, and that's all I have for today, because basically in the next few sessions, we'll show you how to use a program called Grackle to make Google Docs accessible. We'll show you how to use the accessibility checker in Word, but everything needs to be checked before you put it online.
How about the recorded session from Zoom? What are the requirements? You do your weekly web synchronous meetings. What are the requirements?
Yeah. So yeah, it's a good question. So first off, you're not required, unless it's like, that's the only way you're communicating with students, if that's your only lecture. So if it's just like like if your lecture's already on Canvas as a video, and then you're meeting with students synchronously just to meet and ask questions, you don't need to record that. That's optional. First. Second, if you are recording live Zoom sessions, so if that's your lecture and interactivity, or you're recording those sessions with students live, it's the same as any other video. You're going to upload that to YouTube, let it do its auto captions, and put it in your course. Now, again, this is where you get into how often is that video going to be used, right? So what's our, and then actually there's just literally an email conversation going on over the past 20 minutes about the DECT grant. So I'll bring that to you guys in a second here. And so even though that YouTube captions aren't perfect, it gets you most of the way there, and it fulfills kind of like the base level requirement for those live sessions, because they're a one-off. And again, it's a one-off, and it's like, it's no longer relevant to the course after a short amount of time, right? So then they go back and professionally caption those, or spend all your time going in and, you know, hand captioning a 1 or 2 hour video doesn't make sense. Now, if you had a student in your class that absolutely needed those professional, like ADA captions, you can basically get fast tracked to the DECT grant to make sure those are being provided to that student. But for your general everyday videos, just upload it to YouTube, let it do its auto captioning, and then it's there in your class. Right. So is it permanent or is it temporary? Permanent, we want to go the professional route. If it's temporary, let YouTube do its thing and then move on from that. We don't even go back and recaption every single video that we have for the FRC, because we do a Zoom training, and then literally 3 months later, those features have changed in Zoom and we're making a new video. So it's not advantageous for us to go through and do that. If someone like, if we had someone who needed those captioning specifically, like Ignacio, like if it was something that's more long-term or something that we make for him, we might go through and the process and get those captioned for him. Or if it's a shorter video, we'll do it by hand. It's a long-winded way of answering your question, but does that help?
Yes, yes. Yeah, because I do weekly web meetings with all my classes, and I recorded them.
Yeah, so what you might want to do, there's two options to help organize it. You could make a single page in Canvas where you put the new link to the new video every week.
I do.
So that's one option. Another option that we've seen people do is you can post the current video and only the current video on the homepage. So that way you would just change the link every week. Another option is you make a playlist inside of YouTube, and then you just link to the playlist. And then as you upload the new video, it'll just be the current one on top of the playlist. And if you don't know this, you can take a playlist and embed the playlist into a Canvas page. So that way you don't have to do any updating at all. So which might be handy for those weekly ones.
Yeah. But in terms of accessibility, Google is good enough. I mean, YouTube caption is good enough.
YouTube is a good.
Like you said, that semester.
Yeah, exactly. It's good enough for right now. If you're going to use that same video again next semester, we'd want to get it captioned.
Okay.
Right. That's kind of the rule of thumb. So yeah, and it's like, it comes down to time. In a perfect world, if we could just have everything perfectly captioned, would we do that? Yes. It's time and money. Now, as automatic tools become better, hopefully they'll do things like capitalization and punctuation in your field. And if you haven't checked, you might want to check your auto captions. Anne knows exactly what I'm talking about. Because technical terms or if there's background noise or my mic's not picking me up correctly, whatever it is, can alter the captions. Speaking a little too fast, speaking a little too slow. Slow is not usually an issue, but it's always a good idea, especially if you know you're talking about something that's more technical, that particular term. And when I say technical, I just mean to your field, right? Because YouTube is more the captions is general language. Definitely good to review your captions at least occasionally.
Okay.
John, I know you've had a lot of experience with this. Do you want to chime in on that as well?
The only thing I would reiterate is something I put in the chat earlier, and that is in Zoom, if you record to the cloud, they've added a feature recently, it will create a transcript file. And one of the things that is most egregiously not accessible about the auto captions in YouTube is that they are not punctuated. And the auto punctuation in whatever engine, and ironically, it may even be Google that they're subcontracting with. I don't know. And Google owns YouTube,
Yeah.
But the auto captions in Zoom, the punctuation is not bad. Again, it's not going to get you compliant for content that you're going to use over and over and over again. But it certainly reduces the amount of work, and you can go ahead and import that into it comes down as a VTT file, which is a standard format file that most caption supporting sites such as YouTube support. You can go ahead and upload that, and then as I mentioned earlier, YouTube has greatly improved, not perfected, but greatly improved their caption editor. And so the one thing the whole process will teach you pretty quickly. Number one, plan your scripts ahead of time, and number two, a series of 12 5-minute vignettes is substantially superior for all kinds of reasons to one 60-minute video.
And if you ever need help, if you ever need help, you can also take a 60-minute video and cut it into 5-minute segments, right? So, and if you need help with that kind of stuff, we can help you either learn how to do it or process it. Obviously, if it's an ongoing thing, we don't have the manpower to do it, but we can at least get you some tool that will work for you to help you chunk those down. The other thing, I don't want to ever be misleading about the storage on side of things. So for the Zoom cloud recordings, if you want to do the cloud recordings to get the captioning, that's fine. I haven't tried cloud recordings anytime recently, but anytime I try to do a cloud recording that was over 60 minutes, it became a 50-50 shot whether it actually saved the recording or not. So if you're doing a long recording, the Zoom cloud recordings might fail, and we can't keep it there. We can only save it there for 14 days. So it's really just to get that captioning file out. So you would still download that video and then upload it to YouTube or somewhere else. But if you want to try that process, feel free.
Let me tell you what I use. I use the CC Confirm account. I don't know if you're familiar with this, with that, which is different than the City College.
Yeah, it's the 3C Media.
Yeah, and that one doesn't have that restriction about the 60 minutes. So I haven't had issues recording over 60 minutes because I do that. I've been doing that for several years.
It's not a restriction. It's
I know
Zoom.
What I mean, the success rate.
Yeah, Zoom would just fail on me. And so I don't know if it was
successful for me.
Perfect.
Normally I do about an hour and 50 minutes.
Yeah. Like I said, I haven't tried a cloud recording in probably 2 years, but so this is definitely early on. It was failing on me. So yeah, I'm always a little nervous on the cloud recordings.
For Zoom, what's like the upper bound of ideal length where it won't dump it?
Well, if you're recording to your desktop, it tends not to be an issue other than the hard drive space on your computer, right? If you're recording to the cloud, again, I would stick to an hour-ish. Now, it doesn't mean you can also stop the recording and start another recording.
But you said that you noticed that Zoom was failing at it has a higher rate of failure. So to get that sweet spot of avoiding the fail, what would you say?
That's only in the cloud recording.
In the cloud, yeah.
Yeah, and so I would put that at 60-ish minutes, so about an hour. So if you wanted to record for 2 or 3 hours, when you take a break, I hope you would take a break if you're doing a 3-hour session like we are here, is stop the video, stop the recording, and then restart it. So that way you're making those hour chunks as opposed to one long video. Yeah, Patty.
Bronwyn, just my experience, I do 2-hour lectures each week, and it's one shot on Zoom, and knock on wood, I record to the cloud. I have never had a problem, knock on wood.
Good. And that's really,
that's my experience too.
And that's great to hear. Like I said, my experience is older. So I tend to record everything to my desktop. But yeah, so that's great to hear that it seems like they fixed that particular issue, which is really, really good.
My only issue is on the resources of your computer.
Yeah.
You gotta make sure that you close pretty much everything that you don't need. So you just allocate all resources, because it's capturing video, it's capturing your screen, and doing a lot of things on your computer. So from time to time, I got resource issues on the computer that it freezes up.
Yep.
And it's just trying to do many things.
And I would say that's true in general. Like if I'm going to do a long session like I did today, I restart my computer, so nothing's there, right? And then I only open up the browser and whatever I'm demoing during that time. So that way my computer is nice and fresh and ready to go. Another tip for long Zoom sessions that has still been somewhat of an issue sometimes is the day before, or like a couple hours before you're going to do your Zoom lecture, make sure to update your Zoom client. Because that, if it's not up to date, sometimes that can cause issues too. So at least weekly, check it, make sure it's staying up to date. Yeah. Any other questions? Cool. I had this thought, and I think what I'm going to do, I haven't run this by Karen, so it's kind of putting her on the spot a little bit, but I think what we're going to do is to kind of make things a little bit easier. Let me find my share button here. What we're going to do is, you get to see my crazy calendar for a second here. So our next meeting is on the 15th of March. So sometime in the next 2 weeks, so either this week or next week, the deal is that we want to meet with each one of you, either Karen or myself, it doesn't have to be both of us, for an hour to talk about what your plan is, what you're working on, what questions you have, what you want to accomplish, especially considering the items from this particular week. So focusing on Unit 1. What we might do is go through your class with you and make some recommendations along the lines of this particular unit. What I'm thinking that we do, this is our first time doing this class asynchronously. We're usually doing it in a physical space with you. So what I'm thinking that we do is we have you actually download and fill out the self-assessment sheet. So if you go to the SBCC course self-assessment page in the introduction, there's a link here where you can make a copy. If you've never done this before, I'll show you how to do this. This opens up the self-assessment sheet. If I click on this, it'll prompt me to actually make a copy in my space. So this is a great way to give assignments to students where you're giving them a Google Doc to start with. So the link automatically does a copy. Do you guys all know how to do that, or do you want me to show you how to do it really quick? It's super simple.
Yeah, it's all new to me.
Yeah, this is really cool. So if I go to my spreadsheet here, oh, and we showed this earlier, Anne, sorry, the self-assessment thing. But if I go to this spreadsheet and I go to the share settings. Sorry, my Zoom stuff's all in the way. So I go to share, waiting for it to finish loading. Feel free to take your time. Go for it. And then what I would do if I'm sharing this with students is I'm going to set it to anyone with the link can view, right? And then this is my link that I get. So when you paste that link, this is what it looks like. And all we're going to do is this, everything from /edit on. I'm going to take this out and delete it and put /copy. And now that link, when I paste this into Canvas or anywhere else, that link is now generates the prompt to have students make a copy of that page instead of linking out to it. So it's just a different way of giving the resource across. If that's something you want to try and test out, we can work with you on those one-on-one sessions. But what I'm going to ask you guys to do is I'm going to create an assignment in this Unit 1 and have you go through and start looking at the self-assessment. And I know we haven't gone over this with you, so I think this is going to be an interesting resource. But I want you to start thinking about what these things are and start filling this out and then share that link that you're working on your page. So you're going to make a copy and then share a link back to us. And then when we meet with you, we'll take a look at this and start working on this with you. And we'll work on this sheet for the next couple of weeks as we're working on the class. And I'll put in more instructions in there.
We're sharing it to the FRC group. Is that right?
You can, I'll put instructions in the assignment of how to share it. I don't think sharing it to the FRC group will work, but it might. But you don't have to give us editing rights. You can just make it share like a view link. But I'll give instructions in the actual assignment itself. I will put that assignment in this at the bottom of Unit 1. So you'll see that there later today or tomorrow morning at the latest. But you can go in and grab that self-assessment to start out with now. You don't have to wait for the assignment to appear. Okay. And you don't have to do the whole thing. You can focus on just that first page, especially the top part. And if there's not any other questions, I'll run through it really, really quick, and then we can end early.
Yeah. I have a question just about, can you anticipate what the summer is going to be like in terms of availability for FRC staff face-to-face? I know that's a hard call, but let's assume that everybody gets their vaccines in March.
Yeah, well, and that's the trick, right? Because March, April, May, yeah. I don't, for you guys specifically in this group, if you need to come in and meet with, say, Jeff to work on video, or you want to meet with one of us, we are not planning on being back to campus officially until the end of July, as far as the FRC group is concerned. But I live here locally. So if I'm vaccinated and you're vaccinated and you're in this group, I wouldn't mind meeting with you to make sure that this is continuing on, right? For now, we'll do things via Zoom. Once we're all vaccinated, I wouldn't mind doing that, but I would leave that up to, as far as if Jeff or Karen are comfortable, that's up to them. Obviously, you guys know our space. We've got a nice open space. So if we have to, we can work across the room from each other. Yeah, we'll definitely be playing that by ear. Yeah. Any other quick questions? Okay. For this self-assessment, and we'll be talking about some of this stuff in more detail next week. This top part is kind of what's included in your syllabus. And again, like I mentioned earlier, sorry, Anne, this first page is really focused on regular effective contact, right? So it's This is a self-assessment. So this isn't like, there's no grade of like, if you don't have enough of these things, you're bad. It's not about that. In the syllabus, these are items that the OEI will be looking for. So specifying the frequency of contact, how the contact is happening, that's initiated by the instructor, the student initiated contact, how do you want students to contact you? So I let my students know in the syllabus specifically to where to email me. I ask them to go through the Canvas inbox. That's my preference. And then when I email them, I'm generally using an announcement tool. So I show them how to set up their notifications. That's kind of my solution to this one here. Where to post questions and assignments. This is kind of redundant, but it's just, saying that where the assignments are going to go. This is more needed if you're not having them submit assignments through Canvas, right? So if you're using that third-party publisher, that's where this comes into play. So I don't have this, so I would mark this as a no in my syllabus because I don't need to have that. So that's what these things are about. Do you have an orientation, a video orientation, a video welcome to your class are really, really, really good things to have in your class. And we'll show you some examples of those later on. I'll show you my sample of my syllabus where these are. This is the other part I want you to think about. And it's okay not to have, you shouldn't have all of these. If you're doing all of these, you're doing too much. You're going to burn yourself out real quick. So this is a variety of instructor-initiated contact and interactions provided throughout the class. And this is where you're kind of connecting with students, right? So which of these things are you using to provide feedback to students? I don't use email. I use the Canvas inbox and I use the announcements and I use discussions. So I would say no on this. I use the discussions. I use the announcements heavily. I use assignment feedback, and this is particular, like doing the annotations and things inside of the SpeedGrader, inside of the assignment tool. The grades feedback is the comments. So this is the comments area on the side of the SpeedGrader or directly inside the gradebook. So you have those two different kind of areas. So one's the annotations, that's the assignment feedback. The grades is the comments. I also use rubrics on all my assignments. This is something new as well, obviously since you've done it, John, but they really want to see rubrics for all assignments, written assignments, not necessarily for quizzes and things.
They were heavily emphasizing rubrics. I have rubrics on all my things on all my OEI classes.
Okay. I remember the first year they were kind of like, it needs to be on some, or at least the major assignments. And I know they shifted at some point to really requiring it all the way through. Quiz feedback. I don't particularly know anyone who does this. Quiz feedback is not the auto grade. Quiz feedback is something specific. Quiz feedback is built into the quizzes. When the student gets an answer correct or incorrect, that an extra paragraph will pop up. So if they get a quiz question incorrect, it'll pop up a little dialog box saying, that's incorrect. Actually, it's this, and this is where you can find it in the reading, blah, 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 blah.
Nursing
a lot of
uses that.
Nursing does inside of Canvas.
Yes.
Yeah. So a lot of publisher tools do this. So this is particularly talking about the quizzes built into Canvas. So it's okay to say no on that. It's not everyone does that.
So if you anticipate that you're using the publisher tool, a lot of this is out the window, right?
Well, you might be using, you may or may not be using email. I would say you should use announcements. We would talk about these. It depends on where your assignments are living, right? If you're doing a lot of annotations in the publisher tool, I would say to go ahead and check this. Again, this is a self-assessment for yourself. This isn't going to anyone at the state. This is just a worksheet for us internally. The checklist I'll show you later. The checklist can be a couple different ways. It could be a Google form. It could be a spreadsheet that you're giving to students to use, or it could simply be the requirements feature inside of Canvas. So I do this a lot. Are you giving surveys and self-assessments? We'll show examples of that. So just think about how you're interacting with students in your class currently. And if you say no specifically, write a little note about either why you're not using the tool or how you might want to use the tool in the future, right? So this will help us guide when we come together and meet with you. That makes sense. This is casual. This is just, like I said, a map to help. If you want to reformat this in a different way, like if you want to answer these questions in a Google Doc, go for it. This is just a guideline. Cool. Real briefly, since we're so far ahead of time, if I come into my class and I go to my syllabus, this is a key thing. You'll notice that I've got my contact information at the very top, and then I've got my office hours, and then we'll talk about these things later. But this is really what they're looking for as far as good practices in your syllabus, whether your syllabus is in Canvas or a Google Doc or a Google site, wherever you have your syllabus hosted, is that the contact information and your office hours are up front and center so students know how to contact you and make it easy. If you haven't seen it before, I know most of you found it, but in our Canvas now, you can add Zoom right inside the Canvas shell. So this is a new tool, and we can show you how to set that up if you haven't seen it. We also have a video on the FRC side that shows you how to use this versus creating a link and adding it. It's a little bit different.
And that Zoom link is going to be where you find the link for these meetings within Zoom there, because it's a different link actually, and you'll see it within there.
Yep. So if I click on Zoom, and I'll get to that in a second. If I click on the Zoom link here, you can see here's the session. Here's the weekly Zoom link for each meeting is all linked right inside the class here.
So you can have one Zoom link for your lecture and then one Zoom link for your office hours.
Right. But it's all built into the class. So when students or you come in here, you're only seeing the Zoom links for that class, not all your other meetings, right? So if I go to zoom.us, I see everything. This helps me limit the scope, but I'm just seeing this one section at a time.
It's just so cool. That's just so helpful.
It's really nice.
Can you have a standing link just for lectures Monday, Wednesday, Friday, blah, blah, blah?
Absolutely.
Or do you have to have a link for, no, yes.
Yeah, either way. Yep. I was playing with the tool, so we have 4 different links. What happens? You're my guinea pigs. I'm going to go ahead and stop the recording. I can find it.